You talk in the book also about the fact that Vancouver as a port city is very useful to these drug cartels or these loan sharks, the underground banks. And then you also talk about human trafficking that comes through. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And just a quick data point. 2 weeks ago, a fentanyl super lab was busted by the Canadian Federal Police in just a suburb of Vancouver that's very related to the areas I'm investigating. Police said that it could produce 10 million fatal doses of fentanyl per week.
Whoa.
10 million. That's enough to kill a third of the Canadians. And this gets to my point that the precursors coming in from factories in China are pressed up in labs, whether they're in mansions, single homes, or warehouses. Vancouver has become a crucial hub for that fentanyl production and a transshipment point. And so people that are watching this interview in United States, Japan, Australia, have to look at Canada for responsibility. The city of Toronto suburbs, the suburbs in Vancouver are very responsible for sending fentanyl around the world. The port of Vancouver, just like ports on the coast of Mexico, are important both for trade coming in and for fentanyl precursors coming in and for this underground banking cycling of money going out. So if we're talking about ships, we're talking about legitimate trade items, we're talking about precursors hidden in the bowels of the ships. And of course, sometimes we're talking about humans being trafficked as well from the southern coast of China. It's a big issue. What I call the fentanyl kingpins, these would be the people that are bigger than El Chapo ever was, the people that are making the most money off of heroin and fentanyl. They have been most responsible for human trafficking into Canada's west coast. And many of these people would be, people trying to get a better life. Some of them underage women that are trafficked into prostitution. This is it's all dark, but when you're talking about underage females, some of them with gambling debts being trafficked into Canadian cities and then south in the United States, it gets even more dark.
I know there's been a movement to label the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization. And just the more and more I hear, just that seemed like a very accurate label.
There's a very, I believe his name is Garneau, a very, respected journalist in Australia that spent a lot of time in China. I believe he's made a similar observation, if not exactly the same, that at a high level in the party, those connections to organized crime, to triads, are very strong. Therefore, is it that much of a leap to compare them? Some would put Russia in the same category of, if there's that level of collusion, it's a racket. The gangsters in the racket, the officials in the racket, they're all in the same racket. Is the Politburo involved in organized crime? I can't say it that blankly, but we can say that people from the Politburo have been involved with loan sharks and organized crime.
I mean, if you go specifically back to the origins of the Chinese Communist Party, what Mao Zedong had said, and he said it, he wrote it, that what we, the Communist Party, want is for the scum of society to take the lead in creating a China run by the Communist Party. In other words, he was recruiting criminals, or what he called the scum of society, to be part of the upper echelon of the party, because he needed those people in order to do things like kill the landlords and suppress the intellectuals and infiltrate the KMT so that his Chinese Communist Party could gain power. So if that's how the Communist Party started, it's not that big a leap to think that these elements have continued to play a role for the last 70 years that they've been in power.
I agree. And David Mulroney, Canada's former ambassador to China, I always rely on authority when making, when putting paragraphs in a book. And I went to him and asked, can it be true that the party used organized crime in Hong Kong, used the United Front to expand? And he said there's no denying the connection from the earliest days, as you say, of the party till now. The Chinese Communist Party will co-opt and use any tool for their ends. And how does it work? At a very simple level. If you are a high-level gangster and you face, they want you to go do something in Australia, Vancouver, New York, or Toronto, they will get you on a death penalty. You know, it is illegal and you can be killed for dealing drugs in China. So they get that on you and then say, well, you want to live, you want your family to live, it's time for you to go abroad. I looked at a case in my book, Lai Changxing, who's a very familiar figure to experts on China, former most wanted man. He says he was sent to Hong Kong and told to report back on the democracy movement and Taiwanese intelligence. He then ran to Canada, and we'd be, I think, naive to believe that, you know, he wasn't interrelating with intelligence in some way once he arrived in Vancouver, even though he was running from the party at that point.
Wow. I mean, just the idea that the Chinese Communist Party at a high level and like their court system and everything is sending their most talented criminals abroad to go do criminal activity, right? It's even worse than what Cuba did when they sent a whole bunch of prisoners they released to Florida. But in that case, they were just releasing criminals to the United States. Here, it's more like the Chinese Communist Party is releasing criminals and then giving them a specific direction for, you know, gathering intelligence on dissidents or, you know, getting involved in this and that. Like that's an insane level of pushing criminality abroad.
It is, and again, for viewers that are thinking that's a leap too far, look, the FBI said last year, cyber criminals were trying to hack into, world institutions that are trying to, get a vaccine for COVID-19, and organized crime in China was being used to try to hack in and steal that intellectual property. The FBI said China has joined that. I think they said, very, let's just say, shady group of nations that will use organized crime. And so whether it's releasing your most violent and cunning gangsters into other cities and using some of their drug proceeds, whether it's allowing, fentanyl precursors to go other countries without cracking down, or cyber hacking, it is all forms of co-opting and using organized crime.
I mean, last year, the U.S. shut down the Chinese consulate in Houston because they felt it was a center for criminal activity.
There you go. I don't need to say any more. That, the People's Liberation Army operatives, very present in U.S. and Canadian cities. And I show in my book, they're very present in casino networks. And so casinos, real estate, art, those sometimes can be a front for raising money for, more politically aimed activities such as bribes or influence, donations to political parties in the West.